back to another top 10 on my channel. Today's a very different style top 10 because I am joined with the fabulous Kristen Maldonado. Thank you so much for joining me for this.
Thank you for having me.
If you are subscribed to either of our channels, then you know we're both Charm fans. One possibly more than the other. Can't tell which one of us it might be though. But
oh, I don't know.
It's so hard to guess. But I have collabed with Kristen a few times now, her coming and competing on my game show, and then she did an amazing way of celebrating women for Women's History Month on her channel, which I was very honored to be a part of. That was such a large scale collaboration. I don't know if I've seen that many women collaborate on YouTube that didn't involve makeup or something like that.
Yeah, I think that, you know, especially in like our space, like in entertainment, I feel like we don't always get to see women together. And I was like, this seems like the easiest thing to do. Just reach out to a whole bunch of really cool ladies that I really like and see if they want to do something together. And it felt really cool to like be able to connect more with people that maybe I didn't know as well and become friends with people, or be able to, you know, have people on my channel that I really think are amazing and have really interesting, insightful things to say like you. So yeah, that was like probably one of my highlights of this past year in terms of videos. Like it's just, you know, bringing the ladies together, you know?
Hey, someone's gotta do it. Literally, because if nobody does, then it doesn't happen. So speaking of celebrating women, today's top 10, we are talking about our individual top 10 charmed transformations, because Kristen and I had been talking about at some point doing a charmed related collab, and this one is a list I'd had sitting waiting to do, because sometimes I've got people saying do a charm top 10. I'm like, I don't feel like it. So this one came along and I felt like this one had some interesting discussion points that can come along with it, and I thought, why not get Kristen along, because I had so much fun working with her and I kind of missed hanging out with her, even if it's via computer.
Virtual hangouts.
Which is very popular right now. So we're going to start going from number 10 down to our number 1. I don't know what Kristen has picked. She doesn't know what I picked, so we're just going to go one at a time and discuss what it is, why we've picked it, and basically say whatever we feel like. So, starting at number 10. Kristen, what was your number 10 pick?
My number 10 pick for transformations was Phoebe as the mermaid.
Oh, okay. Nice. Mm-hmm. Why did you pick that one for number 10?
I feel like it's a fun visual. Like, you know, I feel like it's very iconic. You know, her in the mermaid tail with the golden scales. I chose it for 10 because I felt like it's super exciting that you get to see her like swimming around in the ocean and kind of really tapping into another like magical persona. You know, she was like collecting shells and all of these, you know, and obsessed with fish and stuff, which was really fun. And I think that she also had like a bit of I love like how the charmed transformations also have to do with kind of things that they're dealing with. So, you know, they talk about how like the mermaids have cold hearts and that's why they want to be at sea. And that's kind of when she was dealing with a lot of drama with Cole, and she kind of wanted to get away from that. And this was sort of her escape and that freedom. And I thought that that was really fun to see that represented as like becoming a mermaid. And that's something that like a lot of people, you know, imagine like you're swimming in a pool and you're like, what if I was a mermaid? You know, so I thought that was a really fun episode.
Yeah, mermaid is definitely on my list. So we'll see that pop up later. I think there's a lot interesting about the mermaid part. One being that that Alyssa Milano actually had a phobia of the water. So for her, she had to kind of conquer this phobia in order to portray and be this convincing mermaid. And you wouldn't know from watching the episode that she had this fear. And then on top of that, it's a lot of people may not know that Alyssa Milano was actually the inspiration for the animation style of Ariel in The Little Mermaid. So the fact all these years later she actually became a mermaid, I think that's actually pretty neat. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
Um,
Yeah, and I think that episode as a whole was really fun. Like I really liked Miley the mermaid and kind of seeing that story. And I think that one of the things I love about the OG show is that they really did a great job of introducing these like different magical beings or different characters, whether, humans and things like that, and making them feel like they were a part of this world. Like I felt like, oh yeah, like we're following Miley the mermaid. Like she's not just like there just to push the Charmed One stories forward. Like
yeah.
she also had her own story, and I really like how they handled that stuff as well.
Yeah, they always, like you said, how it was like, whether it be the demon of the month or the transformation of the week or whatever, that it always reflected what was going on in their personal life. And that was always very much the same with the innocence that they were protecting. There's something that they kind of had a connection with that they could relate to. So it was always good that you could see that kind of humanity in them connecting with people. And it's not like, oh, okay, I just got this job to do. It's like, no, I see a bit of myself in you. And I always thought that that was a pretty good part of the show. But then again, I think there are a lot of good parts.
Totally, totally.
So my number 10 is actually Shakti and Shiva, when Piper and Leo
Ooh.
became the Hindu god and goddess. So Shakti, the goddess of creation, and Shiva, the god of destruction. I kind of have like pros and cons. Like for me, the reason why I like this is because I love the fact that they were willing to. I love any time you're gonna find a lot of mythology picks on my list, and I love when they would try to think about introducing things from other cultures. So going Hindu, not something that would pop up in a lot of places. So I thought that was a really nice touch. My only issue with it is when I look at them, I still just see them as Piper and Leo. The costuming really just looked like they picked something that was like someone going to a Hindu wedding. Aside from Piper having 6 arms, she didn't look like Shakti, and Leo didn't look like Shiva. There was just like little things that you could have maybe seen like popular illustrations of these two that they could have adapted into the characters. But I love that Piper pretty much got the most badass god in Hindu mythology, and she definitely had her awesome moment where she's kicking multiple demon butt with all 6 arms.
All those arms.
I do love that scene, but they didn't do much with Leo, which was unfortunate, because with Leo having the essence of the god of destruction in him, they could have done so much more, because he had so much pent up, and he was dealing with the death of Chris at the time, and his own conscience and all that stuff. So they could have given him more, but he was still just using like his regular elder powers, and I was just like, give me more. But the fact that we even got any type of depiction or characterization of Hindu mythology is like, yes, I made me happy.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that was an episode that I like had to go back because I've watched the whole thing, but the later episodes I like still have to like remind myself. Like I'm super familiar with like the first 3 seasons, maybe the first like 4 seasons, and then like after that I'm like I need to like refresh myself. So that was one that I had to go back, and I was like surprised, like remembering like, oh yeah, they did like a whole Hindu god storyline, and I think that is really cool because, like you said, that's not something that I feel like we see a lot of in like American culture. That sort of representation. It sort of reminds me of like, how I don't know, we got to see the Cheetah Girls go to India. Like I felt like that's like a story where you're like, wow, I can't believe they did that. That's really cool. Like to be able to show other cultures and different things like that. It's like really exciting. So yeah, that's definitely a cool one.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite thing about the transformations in the show in general. There's always something with a lot of their demon inspirations or magical inspirations. It's taken from a lot of places around the world, and I think that makes it fun as a viewer because there's always something new to take in, and then it also makes it fun for the people who are of those cultures where you get to have that moment of like, oh yay, that's kind of me, that's my people, and I kind of like that because it can't be about us white people all the time. It just can't.
Yeah, representation matters.
It does.
It matters.
People can go and say, oh, stop preaching, but yeah, it's typically white people who say that, so. And as a white person, I can trash them all I like, so that's okay. So So, Kristen, what's your number 9 pick?
Okay, my number 9 pick is the superhero transformation because I'm a big comic book nerd. I'm a big fan of like that kind of geek culture. So I thought it was really cool that they introduced a storyline about, this kid who's kind of sort of being bullied or pushed around, and he's really good at art. And it turns out he's technically a witch too, and he has the ability to take whatever he draws and make that come to life. And he turns the charmed ones into superheroes to kind of help him. And they did a lot of fun like things with super hearing or super speed or super strength that were really fun, and I enjoyed the costumes. I just thought that was a really fun kind of like little geeky episode that I appreciated.
I totally agree with you. Superheroes is also on my list, and I love that, they kept the P theme tying in. Like, he doesn't even know that their names start with P, but he's like, they're the protectors, so they've all got P, and it's like, that's just a nice little coincidence. But yeah, there's something about that particular power, like it almost like reminds me and goes back to like the Indian in the cupboard type thing, where it's like, put your fingers in, close the door. It's like, oh, my fingers came to life. It's that kind of thing, and I'll probably say more when I get to my list.
Yes, totally. So what was your number 9?
My number 9 is the nymphs. So again,
Okay.
we're going for something that is from mythology. Probably one of my top 2 mythologies of the world. It's always a tie between Greek and Egypt.
Oh, I love Greek mythology.
It's so much fun for me. I've pretty much been studying it like since I was a kid. And so while I think costume wise they could have done more than just put them in different shades of green outfits. They could have done something really creative when that the actress is deciding to like always flounce around. I thought it was so weird and funny. But the fact that it's like, again, we've got something that is from Greek mythology, and when you see the magical aspect of them is when I think I'm having the most fun with them, because you see them having this deep love and connection to nature, and kind of the way that they talk about it kind of lets the people around them reappreciate what nature is and what nature does when they're having that moment and they're describing that, we don't just make things, like look pretty. It's like, without us, everything will wither and die. And it's almost like a speaking as to, if you don't take care of them, you don't take care of nature, and kind of turns into, kind of relates into the whole just caring for nature in general. I'm not saying we all have to, start wearing sandals and wearing patchouli oil or stuff like that. But I just like that there was something that's both mythological and also has this really nice message about, being free and just kind of going back to that old feeling of like going out in nature and just kind of, take away the technology, put the phone down. Okay, we can't really go out too much in nature right now, but pandemics aside...
As long as you're away from people.
But pandemics aside, there's something serene when you kind of just like around nature in general. Like if you're in a botanical garden or something, you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, this feels nice. So yeah, that's
Yeah, and I think another thing that I liked about that episode was towards the end, like, well, I guess throughout the whole thing, they're looking for their
Seder.
what is their satyr, and towards the end, Piper says something about like, well, he's gone now. You don't need him. You guys can like do this on your own. And I really enjoy messages like that in a lot of their stories, where the charmed ones are kind of like empowering people, and making them realize that like they don't need to rely on other people, and like that these women didn't need this satyr dude to lead them, that they could do it on their own, which I thought was nice.
Yeah, because when you're looking at it, they're so used to this kind of routine in their life. It's like, well, we can't open the spring unless the Satyr tells us to. And it's like, yeah, but you're also the only ones who can do it. He can't.
You have power.
Yeah, he's dependent on you. Everything that he is only because you exist. So it's like, you don't need him, but he needs you. And there's that really empowering storyline to that. And I like that very much. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I blanked for a second, and it's not because I don't care. It's because it's after midnight. That's why. So.
No, I'm telling you, I was watching them all very recently. Like I was, so that's why it's very, very fresh in my head. Also, the way that they got rid of him, that guy became immortal, and they were very creative with how they kind of got rid of that guy. So that was
true.
Cool.
He became a giant tree. Yay!
Yeah.
Okay, so what is your number 8?
Okay, so my number 8 is when Peru became an empath. Because I thought that, again, I get drawn to the very emotional, storylines and how it connects to them and stuff. And that one was interesting because, it's a demon who was basically cursed with the power of empath, and Peru doesn't realize that, and she tries to help him, and she gets his power, and it's sort of like, I really enjoyed how they took that story and sort of made it about, embracing feelings and using that feeling and emotion as your power and as your strength, because it could be very overwhelming. She's, being able to feel all the emotions in the world. You feel the happy stuff and also the sad stuff, and that could definitely be very overwhelming and maybe even destroy some people, metaphorically and also in this show. And so I really like that they were able to kind of talk her through what she's feeling, have her embrace it, and then she was able to become more powerful and do some really interesting stuff, especially with her astral projection. And she ended up having like a really crazy fight scene, which I thought was really cool. But it all kind of came out of that emotion and the power from feeling your feelings.
Yeah, that is a really good pick. I've always loved and gravitated to stories, and especially female characters for me. Like, my favorite are the ones who are very maternal, but in the depiction of their maternal side, it's depicted as a strength, not a weakness. Whereas a lot of films like to go, oh, she's just the mom, it's okay. It's like, the expression is mother lifting a car off her child for a reason, because that instinct is very strong. So I gravitate to those kind of characters. So I do love the message of there's power in embracing and accepting those emotions. I do love that scene where the former priest, he's consoling her, showing that he didn't really still need his power to be able to have that ability. And he's talking to her and he says, I gave this power to a demon because he can't handle these emotions. You can. And she's just like, no. He's like, just let it in. It's when you're trying to push them away that they crush you, but when you accept it and embrace it, they make you stronger. And it's so true for anything. I've often say when it comes to like dealing with depression, if you bottle things up and you just like pretend it's not happening, it's gonna come and kick your butt down the line. But if you just let it in, accept how you're feeling, you can get through it a lot easier and a lot faster. So that's a really good pick. That's a really good
thank you. I think that a lot of the stories that the Charmed ones dealt with like connect to just like really real life situations, even though it's it's a magical situation, but it still can relate to things that people deal with.
Oh, for sure. So what
was your pick?
My number 8 is the Charmed ones hulking out in season 8.
Okay.
And the reason why I picked this, aside from the fact I love how great that transition is, they got in the doubles, all in the makeup, and position was so right, it just looks so perfect. But aside from the makeup, I love the actual point of that story, where it's the government is messing with things that they don't understand, and as a result, a virus, funny that, a virus starts spreading, and it's specifically affecting anyone with magical blood. It's not discriminating against good or evil. It doesn't matter. It's just spreading, and it's spreading like wildfire, and it's a race against time to just try and stop a deadly magical virus, and they're trying to find patient zero, despite the fact that it is in a magical setting. That's so real, and it's so real right now. Like, that, people messing with things that they don't understand and it having severe repercussions. Like, that's tale as old as time, that one is.
It is, and I feel like they've done stories like that multiple times on Charm, because it's just like such a, yep, like, of course, people messing with things that they don't understand. Dr. Curtis, man, prime example.
Exactly.
Messing with things you didn't understand.
Exactly. What is your number 7 pick?
My number 7 pick is Manny Hanks, when Peru turned into a man.
That was a good one.
That was a wild episode. And I think what I really enjoy about it is sort of that duality that we get to explore in Peru of femininity and masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And she, even as a man, is dealing with both. Like, we get to see that when she opens up to her feminine side, when she's doing those that online dating video, that's so old now. I'm like, whoa, this feels ancient. But when she's doing that, everyone gravitates towards her because she's so open with her emotions when she's Manny. But then also she kind of she starts trying to feel like a man, and her way of doing that is she punches somebody out. And we get a really, I think, important message from Piper in that episode that's kind of like, that's not what makes a man, you know? And I think it was really nice to see them kind of tackle that and show, like, being a man is not being the strongest one, or, you know, being the toughest one and punching people out. It's, you know, and I mean, she's talking about Dan in terms of, like, the ideal man, which I'm not a fan of Dan, but, you know, he was a nice guy.
He was.
Who, you know, was sweet. You know, we watch his online dating video too, and he's like, yeah, you know, I look for the girl next door. You know, I like to wait for her to leave for work, and I'll leave for work too, just to, like, be able to see a glimpse of her. And, you know, just like little cheesy things like that kind of showed, like, that, you know, it's okay to embrace your feminine side, or not, or just not like a hyper masculine side, like that there are different elements to people. And so I really enjoyed being able to see that in this episode, and you know, in seeing Peru transform.
Peru as a man is also definitely on my list. I don't know how you can do a transformation list and, like, not mention that. I remember when I actually got to meet some of the cast when they were in Melbourne, and I had them sign my one of my trading card collections. And I handed it over to Shannon, and so the first set is Peru. So she immediately gets to open up, and there she's like, oh, wow. And then she sees the card of her as a man, and immediately, without any prompting, she's just like, yes, I remember that. And she says, I was inspired by an ex-boyfriend of mine when I did this. So I don't know, I was like, I didn't even have to ask. I just got free information. Yes! So I was just like, that's really interesting. And I'm like, now I'm wondering, who was it? What was the dynamic like? Like, just all those little things, because she wasn't depicting anything that was disrespectful. It's like, almost like, this is someone kind of like I got to know, and now I'm just kind of almost taking inspiration from them. So I'm gonna hope that it was a semi-decent relationship that ended amicably. That's what I'm gonna hope.
Right? Yeah. Hopefully. And I think what also is really fun about this one is just that, like, you know, every episode they're turning into, like, warlocks and demons and crazy mythological things, and then in this one she turns into a guy. You know, it's like kind of goofy. You know, it's very fun.
Yeah. My number 7 pick is Piper turning into a Fury.
Ooh, that's on my list too.
I do love this one. I think costume-wise, while I think costume-wise they ended up looking more like harpies than they did Furies, I gotta say, I love the tribal makeup. That was probably my favorite part. And I think there's a little difference in each one. So it's like, while it's tribal, there's, like, individual characterizations in this makeup, which I think is a really nice attention to detail. But it's not just the fact that, again, it's a storyline that is relating to something that the characters are dealing with. And in Piper's case, it's that she's going through the stage of grief, which is pure anger, but she's not dealing with it. She's not confronting her anger and what she's angry at, and it takes Paige to kind of be like, who's been down that road, to be like, I know you're angry at Peru, but you don't want to be angry at Peru because it feels wrong to be angry at someone who's dead. But what I love is not just her becoming a Fury, is just what Furies represent, because again, they're from Greek mythology. Furies, there was actually 3 of them. They were actually goddesses. They were actually the children of Gaia and Uranus, so the original gods. And there was one who was, so there were goddesses of vengeance. And so they had one who was for vengeance of murder, and I forgot what the other 2 were now, but basically they're just like, it's funny how they're demons in charm, but they're goddesses in Greek mythology. But they did at least keep the main part where they're kind of neutral, because they don't really care where you consider yourself to align. They punish evildoers, and that is their duty, to kind of instill that kind of justice. Like, you committed a crime, you committed robbery, whichever it is, well, we're here to punish you. So I kind of feel a little disappointed that they were depicted as demons, because goddesses, but I do love that whole message that there's even just this entire entity that's entire purpose is to essentially right wrongs. It's like, gives me that hope that, well, the law didn't get you, but something else will.
Kind of like karma.
Yeah. Okay, so what is your number 6 pick?
My number 6 pick is the goddesses.
Okay, cool.
Yes. So what I really liked about the goddesses episode is that, again, it really played into their different powers and personalities, and it was kind of like taking their personalities and just like putting it to the next level, because they have like the powers of gods. And I liked being able to see kind of how, you know, Phoebe, she was the goddess of love because she kind of battled the darkest love there was with Cole and came back from it. Or how Piper, you know, became a mother and, you know, was kind of like this very grounded person. So she became sort of like that type of, that type of goddess. And how Paige became the goddess of war because, you know, she always loved like learning about magic, but like never really like let that power consume her. And you know, to see that like Leo kind of picked specific things for them based off of like their personalities and what their strengths are, and then to see that like, you know, they really need his kind of like support to get that confidence was really fun. And just to see like how they each tapped into their sort of stereotypes and were able to like come back from it and become stronger together. Although that episode also kind of ended in some twists and turns that got a little dark, but just, you know, to go to the base of just like them being the goddesses was fun.
Goddesses is definitely on my list. Again, it's Greek mythology, so it's hard not to. But as much as I love them, I think the costuming was really nice. You can see that they did try to like keep in a little bit of what you can think of as the, you know, the Grecian era. But I mean, as much as I especially love that whenever they teleport, they like each have their own individual teleportation indicative of which god.
The heart.
Yeah, that's so cute.
For Phoebe.
I love that. I love those little things, and I especially love when Piper fully embraces and acknowledges, you know, declares herself a god and just is like, F you all, and is fully there to F shit up. But I also have, as much as I love that one, I also have a lot of conflicted feelings with it. But also my confliction just kind of makes me love it more because I'm like so zoned in and focused on it. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna stare at this picture all day long and like debate it in my head, but I'm addicted to it. So I'll probably say that one later.
Okay.
my number 6 was Peru. Was Peru as a man. That was my number 6 pick.
Yes.
And like a lot of what you were saying, I think that Peru turning into a man is one of it's a completely different way of addressing toxic masculinity that has not really been done, in my opinion, in a lot of other shows, because it's not just Prue like being, well, now I'm a man, so now I'm just going to be doing this, because naturally she's very feminine. And then she's like, oh, hang on, I can't show this level of femininity because guys are looking at you like, what is that about? And that kind of, you know, talks in, like, she's kind of also getting that insider perspective of what it means to be a guy and have any feminine traits, and guys are going, well, no, you can't do that, you can't have that. And so she's understanding, wow, I think guys feel, there are certain guys who feel that kind of suppressed feeling, that we both have a lot of things in common, that while we have different genders, there's a lot that we share that's the same. We have a lot of the same insecurities. Like when she's talking to the guy who she's trying to date, and he's just like, oh, will she call me, will she this? And she's like, but that's what I'm thinking about you, you know? So it's, I love that they were doing that. I didn't think that it's one of those things that's disrespectful. I think that it's a unique way of doing something, instead of just going like everybody else does. It's like, well, we're going to show a bunch of men and, you know, he's crying because his dad's abusive. It's like, no, this was was more of the walk a mile in my shoes way of addressing it. And I respect when people actually take some thought into, well, if this did happen, how would a person feel? So
yeah, because I think, especially since this is kind of like a goofier episode, you know, where they're not changing into, you know, some crazy fantastical magical being, like it could have easily turned into something like joke worthy. But I feel like the way that they had Shannon, like the way that Shannon Doherty played the character, was like kind of still like serious, like, not that it's a serious role, but like, you know, that she took it seriously and wasn't trying to just like make a parody. Like, she was still Prue. She was still like, it was her, still like how she would actually portray that, not like, oh, let's do this over the top thing that would never really happen, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think that you definitely make a lot of sense with like how they did respectfully, you know, where it's like, it's not a joke. It's like, this is, you know, we're actually diving into like how men and women feel and how there are more similarities than differences.
Yeah, I think the only time we've come close in another show doing that is Sabrina the Teenage Witch very much did the same thing, where Sabrina did actually cast a spell or take a potion to turn herself into a guy. So I think it was so that she could understand Harvey or talk to him because she felt like he was pulling away or something. Can't remember, it's been a while, but I think that's what it was. And she was kind of understanding a bit more about guys. And while there's a lot more comedy in Sabrina than there is in Charmed, because it is a teenage show, it's also in a different time in a person's life, where hers was during, you know, teen years, so you got the hormones and everything. So they really leaned into that. And this is dealing with, you know, being a grown-up and dealing with the opposite gender, which comes with a lot more weight to it. So this is like the only two that I can think of. But I think both times they've tackled different issues, but still things that are very relevant.
Oh, nice. I have to rewatch that Sabrina episode.
I wish I could remember what season it was, but it's there. So what is your number 5 pick? I am talking number 5. Yes, number 5. Number 5.
My number 5 pick is the Genie episode, where Phoebe becomes a genie.
Ding.
Yes. I love the costuming. I thought that it felt very, like, you know, nostalgic, and I think in general it was fun to see that their kind of adversary was, you know, an evil female genie. I thought that was kind of cool. Especially when you're diving into, like, it sort of felt a little bit like an Aladdin-esque story. You know, we have the, you know, the 40 thieves, and we're looking for this lost city. You know, you could have easily done like someone like a Jafar type of character or something. So I thought that was cool to see, like, a sort of different, you know, different take on that. And then just, I think it was fun to see the way that Phoebe portrayed being a genie. You know, she was sort of like, had to do whatever Chris wanted. And she had to sort of find this balance between taking commands but also taking control of the situation. So when Chris is freaking out about like, will I even be born? Let's have my mom and dad sleep together. She's like, okay, yeah, you guys can go to sleep right next to each other on the couch, like and just like playing up kind of these like goofy things that like I think we see in Genie stories a lot of time where it's like what you wish for is not necessarily what you get.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of fun to kind of see how they tackled that. I thought that was a fun one, and also just being able to see how a whole bunch of different people got to be genies, and you got to kind of see their different iterations of what that would look like was fun.
That's also one of the rare times they often don't really use the same transformation twice in Charmed. They usually try to change it up, but this is the second time that we've encountered genies in Charmed, the first being in season 2. Only this time it's now one of them is actually becoming one. So technically we had 3 genies in that one episode alone, because Phoebe was a genie, Richard was a genie, and then we had Jenny the genie. So I love that there's so much that you could probably delve into about the genie in general in this universe, because it's a being that essentially has limitless power and can do what kind of like there's only very few entities that can bring back the dead, like the avatars. But it's like, yep, wish it, yep, bang, there you go, dead people back to life.
Yeah, they bring back the dead and kill people. Yeah,
they are this kind of supreme force, but they don't have freedom, but they also have a lot more power than I think people give them credit for. It's like people are always there to come and take advantage of the power that they have, but at the end of the day, the genie still has the power because the genie controls how they grant the wish. And it's like, you think because you're, saying the wish, it's like, haha, I'm in control. It's like, are you? Are you really? So there's like a really interesting dichotomy kind of going on there that I like and I think is really appealing about genies in general. Well,
totally. And I feel like there's not like a whole lot of genie stories in like out there.
That's true.
So I kind of like that we got to see like this different take on it, and now we kind of know why genies are so tricky, because they have the power but they don't have the freedom, and I feel like that makes a lot of sense to be kind of tricky in that kind of situation.
Yeah, and unlike season 2, this one again took a more cultural aspect to it, where it's like we're dealing with like a lost city in Persia. It's like, well, the Persian Empire doesn't even exist anymore. It's like, bye, we're educating the children. It's like, now you're learning about Persia, and Leo can read Arabic, and I'm just like, all these little things, and I'm just like, okay, well, why are you people surprised? You should actually know white lighters can essentially speak like every language. So, but I love that they kind of just had that one little moment. It's like, just remember, Leo actually has brains. So this is why you keep him around. He's useful. He reads Arabic. Yes. It's like, where were you 10 minutes ago when we needed you to read the warning on the bottle?
How come Chris didn't read it?
He was slacking off on the job.
He should be able to do it too. Yeah.
Slacker.
What was your pick?
My number 5 was the superheroes. That was definitely mine. I gotta say, it's one of my favorite costumes in Charmed, because while there are people who love to trash them and go, oh, they're so skimpy, they're this, I'm like, have you ever seen a comic book? Like, for me, they really did look like female comic superheroes. They were very overly stereotypical, like to the point where when we look at like Marvel today and people are like, oh, but that's not what Scarlet Witch wore in the comics. It's like, can you actually picture her running around wearing that outfit? I mean, but in this, it's like, it's okay, because this is an insecure teenager's fantasy of just creating this thing in his mind to like help himself and deal with his own feelings, and like, if there was someone who could protect me. I also love that in his mind, when he envisioned something to protect himself, he pictured women.
Yeah.
He didn't picture a man. He pictured these strong, kind of nurturing figures as opposed to men. Like, he pictured himself as a strong person, but he doesn't have obviously a maternal, figure at home, so he's kind of, created 3 for himself, which I think that there's a lot that can be said just from that alone, that it's just like, well, I want to be a tough guy, but at the end of the day, I wish that there was this, maternal figure around me to kind of guide me and protect me. So I like that message.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think especially like, we see the way that he draws his character, that he could easily make them look different. He could make them look like 3 guy superheroes if he wanted to. He made himself look like one, but he made them look like themselves, but, super powered. And I think that that's definitely what you said, an important message about like this guy needed like somebody to help guide him and protect him. And these 3 women were able to do that.
Yeah, because no disrespect to the men out there, but when you think of something that's going to nurture you, protect you, you think maternal. You don't necessarily think paternal. You think go to your dad when you want him to beat up the bullies, but he's like, no, I just want someone to look after me, because he's alone and he doesn't have that. And I always felt, kind of sorry for that kid. Tough break, dude. I feel for you, man.
Well, it all worked out for him in the end, because he got the powers and he got rid of the bad guys. So.
And now he's living up on the cloud like King Monk. So good for him.
Yeah. I thought it was so funny in that episode when Leo's like, when they're like, wait, he can become an elder, and Leo's like, yeah, elders are like kings. They can be any age. I'm like, okay, so this kid's like a king now. Okay.
Wow. God, that's a lot of that's a big hierarchy going on up there. There's a lot of kings. And a couple of queens, although we don't see them very much, but at least we know they're there. So,
yeah,
we're getting close to number 1, moving on to number 4. What was your number 4 pick?
My number 4 pick is the Lost and Bound episode where Phoebe becomes like bewitched, like the 1950s housewife.
Okay, nice one. I did love the special effects that they did on Phoebe for that one. That's so much fun. I love that she really does look like a TV going on the blinker. That's so
flicking. Great. Yeah.
Love that.
So what I really liked about this episode is, I think, again, I love those important messages, and this one feels like an important message to me.
It is.
About how, Phoebe, I think just in general, Phoebe's a character that we've kind of seen be, and especially in the beginning, very free. She didn't know what she wanted to do. She kind of clung to witchcraft because it was like finally like something exciting that she could be a part of. She never knew what she wanted to like do as a career or things like that at the very beginning of the series. Yeah. And then I think when we get into, her relationship with Cole, when we see that they're about to get married, or they're kind of leaning towards that, I think it kind of freaks her out, because she sort of feels like, now I need to become this stereotypical housewife. That's what people want, right? Like that's what a husband would want me to be. And I think a lot of it is, clearly Graham's ring, but I think it does bring, which is sort of cursed to become, the perfect housewife. But I think it brings up important topics that, like, I'm sure many, many women are dealing with even now. This idea of like, can I have a career? Can I be my own person? Do I have to stay at home and just cook and clean and serve my husband? And I really like that Cole, who is a character that I will be honest, like Cole and Phoebe's relationship is not my favorite, but I loved that in this episode, he was so like, Phoebe, of course you're your own independent person. Like, you don't have to like cater to me now that we're going to get married. Like that, how does that make sense? No, we're like equal partners. And that even though she sort of is now like going through this like sort of like rabbit hole of like, oh well, now I have to be this certain way, he was always there the whole time being like, no, you don't. And I think some of it was the ring, and some of it might have been like the ring bringing out more insecurities about how she felt about like, what does it mean to be getting married, or to be in that kind of situation.
One of the things that I've always loved about Phoebe is that her character, and I got to agree, I don't understand why, to each their own, but I don't understand why people love Phoebe and Cole so much, because they were specifically written to be a story about being in a toxic relationship. So for me, they're not the people that you should want to be together. Like, no, they're bad for each other. Like, no.
Mm-hmm.
But Phoebe, her entire thing, you know, she's essentially she's grown up without a mother figure, she's grown up without a father figure, she's grown up without a married parents. So she doesn't know any of those things, and I love that when Cole first proposes, she goes, I don't know how to be a wife. And he's pretty much just like, well, you think I know how to be a husband? Like, what? He's like, I'm a 100-year-old demon, for God's sake. And but then she doesn't know how she wants to be a wife or what that means to her, but she also has that other side where she really wants to be a mother. And so I feel like she always depicted two things that are very honest to women. Either being like, oh, I'm getting married. It's like, well, I love you, but I don't know what marriage means for me or in general. And then it's like children. It's just like, I really want to do it, but guess what? I'm a woman and we have ticking clocks and, you know, sometimes life is really shit. I kind of take it really personal when people trash on Phoebe being so baby crazy, because as I've gotten older, it's something I can really relate to, because I have my own issues that may get in the way of me having children in the future. And as that's come along, I've been able to relate to her even more. It's like you get older and you have that instinct, and it's like, well, I want that, but am I ever going to be able to get it? But she was always proactive about it, which I really appreciated, even though it resulted in her losing her powers, and that's pretty shitty. But I do love that, yeah, that whole thing is just like that fear of what is marriage, what is being a wife. And Cole's basically is like, it's whatever the hell you want it to be. So
yeah, so I definitely think that one like definitely speaks to me as like just an important story that can relate to a lot of women kind of like universally. And like you said, their whole situation of like, you know, them not having those kind of figures in their lives, like a strong, you know, marriage for them to look at, I think is something that, you know, again, just goes back to like what we've seen throughout this show of how like things are brought up and then they really continue on, you know, like it's not like, oh, we know that they don't have a strong, you know, motherly and fatherly example because they, you know, they didn't have that growing up, and then it's like never brought up again. Like I think I really love how this show like continues to bring up topics and you know, keeps them going in a way that feels like real. But like, yeah, of course, if something that happened in season 1 is going to come back up again in season 3 or season 4, you know, these certain themes, which I think is really cool.
It's one of the things I always thought they did well was the evolution of the characters. It's like their personalities and the things that they care about changed as they got older, you know, especially with Piper, you know, she had to become the older sister, and it's just like things, it's like, yeah, they're not stagnant. People change, people evolve, and people are complex. Okay?
Yeah. They do a really great job of exploring that, I think, in this entire series.
I would agree. My number 4 pick is the Charmed Ones turning into Valkyries.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's interesting. I feel like on the mythology front, they actually really stuck, I felt, true to Norse mythology and Valkyries, which I think is in Norse mythology, there's 10 Valkyries that serve Odin, and their entire duty is to go along the battlefield and decide who among the slain is going to go to Valhalla. And the whole point of Valhalla is that you train and fight all day and you celebrate and drink beer by night, but Odin is preparing and he's picking the best soldiers and preparing them for Ragnarok, so he has an army that is going to be there for the end of the world. And that's exactly what these Valkyries do. They take heroes and then they train them and they're preparing them for the ultimate battle. I love that they're also, but I would have loved if in the costume, like, they had those, like, Viking-style helmets and armor, you know, with the wings and everything, like, very, I don't care if it's on the nose. I want that Norse look. But there wasn't anything that I felt was really, like, again, they like to go, you know, they dress really skimpy. I felt that their costumes, is very similar to like the Amazons of Themyscira. There's a very much the same, like, you know, like the animal leather type looks, and they're both on, you know, a cloaked island in the middle of nowhere, and they spend all their days fighting and training. But I love that it's an entire island of women, and they are the superior ones on this island, and they don't take shit from men, like, especially, and I've forgotten which the Valkyrie's name, but when a biker dude is giving her shit and she's just like, say what now? Like, she wasn't having it, because they see men as an inferior being. But I like when the charm ones come along, and Piper, again, it's a story for Piper, who's, you know, Leo's taking control of her emotions. Phoebe's Paige is also taking control of her emotions. She's just in a very conflicted place, and there's this one thing where it's like, guess what? If you come here, there's just a strict set of rules, and it's all very easy to understand. It's like, cool, I can handle this because it's way better than what's going on in my life right now. And she doesn't want to deal with anything. But when she comes out the other side going, you know what? Nobody's perfect. And things are really crap, but guess what? Nobody's your enemy here. And men and women don't have to be enemies. We actually have a lot in common. And she was like going through that and able to embrace, like, okay, I'm going to go back and deal with my really complicated life. See
ya! Yeah, I think this was definitely a fun one. It kind of brought me back to, and I think they even mention it in the episode, like Xena or like Wonder Woman, and it kind of felt like taking inspiration from those and kind of infusing it in the show, which is really fun. And I think in general, what I've noticed is that I really enjoy like the Piper transformations. I feel like those are like all the top ones on my list. And I think just because Piper goes through like such sort of like big transformations, like just from season 1 to season like 4, completely, you know, huge roller coaster amount of changes that she's dealt with. And I think this is a cool one, like you mentioned with Valhalla, diving into that kind of like mythology. I don't know if you've ever read any of like the Rick Riordan books.
I haven't.
But I think you would love them. He has a series called Magnus Chase where he's from Valhalla, and they like are going out into the regular world and like going on adventures and stuff. And also the Percy Jackson series, which now is coming to Disney Plus soon. But like, I think you would really enjoy those. It's all like that Greek mythology, the Norse mythology. They dive into all of those things, and the way that he writes the stories are very like inclusive, representative, diverse. I think you would enjoy that a lot. But you know, I also love that this show dived into these things that maybe like, you know, you're sort of learning at the same time. Yeah. You know, like with all of this different mythology and stuff. So I really like that as well.
There's so much fun too. Like anytime it's like we're taking a mythology transformation, I'm like, I'm at home. I'm at peace right now. It's a very happy place.
Yeah.
Oh, we're really moving into the top tier. So now it's time for number 3. Kristen, what's your number 3 pick?
My number 3 pick is the Wendigo.
Oh my god. Number 3 for me is the Wendigo as well.
Yes! Wow, we've matched up.
Took a while.
Right? I think it's, you know, it's the first transformation.
Oh yeah.
It's like pretty iconic.
It is.
And I think, you know, we're just, not only are we dealing with this transformation, we're like learning about these characters still. We're seeing Piper on like these, you know, just like this journey of like, just to watch her transformation. Like she's like sweating, like physically, like you're like, actually, this is one of the ones where you actually get to see her from like the very beginning. Like you're sort of slowly watching her transform throughout the episode, which I thought was really fun. And then, you know, when she finally gets out as the Wendigo, it was sort of like this, you know, it's like, oh shoot, what are we gonna do? Let's shoot a flare gun. Oh, thank God, she froze it. That's how we know. That's how we know it's her. You know, there's like sort of like these little like cheesy things, but also at the same time, it just feels like super classic to me. To me, that's why it was so high up, because I just like, as I was rewatching it, I was like, oh man, this is like the first transformation. Like it just has a warm place in my heart. And, to see, like, as we're just continuing to explore her character and, as the Wendigo, like, well, as herself in the season, she was very, like, kind of shy and quiet and would, like, do whatever anyone said. And then as the Wendigo, she starts having, like, this attitude. She's like, shut up. Like, and you're like, oh, wow, she's really transforming. So that was just, like, really cool to see, I think, like, them really diving into, the magic right away with this transformation.
I think also it's probably one of the most impressive transformations in terms of like prosthetics and everything that the series ever did, and so early on in the show. Like, for me, it's like, damn it, why couldn't we get more of those? Like, I feel like as the series went on, they opted for more CGI and computer work, which me personally, whether it's TV or film, I always prefer physical effects over computer ones. I just find there's just so much more you can take in them, and you can really appreciate the fine details. But it's funny how so much of this entity, they gave it an empowering-ish feminine spin, because the whole time they're thinking the Wendigo is a man. They're reading it in the book, and the book said it was a man who was betrayed by his lover, and he ate out her heart and he became the first Wendigo. So they're automatically thinking it's a dude. They have the same mindset of everybody, where it's like, oh yeah, no, women can't do this and women can't do this. And then by the end of it, it did turn out to be a woman was the Wendigo. She was cheated on by her lover, and that's how she became the first one. And she's definitely, she's loving it. She's loving her new, Wendigo post being cheated on life. And so it's just like, okay, it's like, well, obviously you're not handling your issues very well. But it's also the first time that we see the Chalmers, more specifically Piper in this case, actually really get close and get to know an innocent and bond with them, and you kind of and form a connection where she became invested on stopping this thing, not because of it, what was evil, but because she wanted to bring justice to this person who was hurt and had a broken heart, and lost a loved one, which is something that she could relate to. And then by the end of the episode, I love that you can see like she kind of took something away from it, where it's like, you can let loose a bit, and she cracks that whole joke. It's like, but stay out of my way or I'll kill you. And they're like, what? She's like, I'm kidding. It's a joke. Like, I appreciate that. Like, I appreciate everything in that episode. But
yeah, I think you definitely make a lot of great points also about the fact that it was a woman. And I think even that character, Agent, oh shoot, I forget what her name was.
Well, I can tell your name is Ashley at one point, so.
Ashley, she, like even like when she's like interacting with Andy is very like bold and very like just saying things that like I think maybe some people wouldn't expect a woman to say.
Very secure in her sexuality.
Yeah, which I thought was like kind of, I mean, as much as she was the evil character in this, it was like empowering, or like kind of like interesting to see that, she's very like, she was so confident in herself. So, I thought that was definitely an interesting thing to see.
And it's not like they went and made it like for no reason, or it's just like, yeah, let's just make her, sexy FBI agent. She's very open with everything that she's gone through, and she's telling you, she's like, I had my heart broken, and I have become something so much better. She's like, I don't care about this, and I don't worry about other people now. And it's just like, okay, so there was basically this lesson of embracing change and, kind of letting yourself have these other things. Unfortunately, she's going around killing people. I mean, that's the downside.
Yeah.
But
embrace your confidence. Just don't, attack people.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another fun thing though about this episode, was that they were kind of like, she was dropping hints the whole time, and you really had to be like, oh, whoa, like paying attention, so that when you look back, you're like, okay, so it was you, all right.
So,
classic.
Number 2, Kristen.
Number 2
was at numero 2.
My number two was the Fury transformation.
Oh, wow, that was up really high.
Yeah, I think it was so high up for me mainly because of that last scene with um, Piper and Paige. Like I said, the emotional ones, they get
We're
me.
gonna start
That's why I was
crying.
so high up.
Get out the tissues.
Oh God, oh God. I just, I think that it's such a deep story. Um, I love how they're like really diving into Piper's grief because that is something that I think around that time, like, I don't know if there was really a lot of shows doing things like that. Like, I think if this show was not Charmed, if it was a different show and they had to like get rid of a character, they would have just gotten rid of them, maybe mention them once in one episode to be like, yeah, they're gone, and never brought it up again. But they really made losing Prue such a deep emotional story, and I think that that just shows that the writers really knew what they were doing of like, okay, well, we can't just like write off a character, like we need to have this like impact everyone because this character was such an important part of their, you know, sisterhood.
Yeah.
The part my favorite part is when she turns to Paige and is like, how dare you, and it looks like she's going to yell at Paige, but then she turns to where Prue is I guess buried or resting, and is like, how dare you leave me, like I hate that you would think that I like don't need you, you know, like all this stuff, and I'm just like, the feels. And so like that for me is like what really solidified that episode or that transformation as one that really just like spoke to me because, you know, we're really getting to see her, you know, and I think like what you mentioned before, like this is her dealing with the anger of losing someone. And I think that's another thing that, do we see that all the time? Like, I think, you know, we see people upset about it. You know, we do hear about like the different stages of grief, but like she was really just furious about, about this. And I think that that was a really smart like way for them to tackle it, like to try to pick something that you really, you know, this transformation kind of just the name itself, Fury, really related to what she was dealing with. Um, and sort of allowed her to release her feelings in a cathartic way where like towards the end she's like, yeah, actually I do feel a little bit better now that I've like said how I feel and like released that. And I think it was a really powerful moment, that scene. Whew, very powerful.
As you said, it's one of those things where they don't just completely abandon a storyline. We saw from the first episode of this season, Piper is angry. She is angry at everybody. She's angry at Leo for feeling he saved her because that's his wife, and he's just like, she was already gone, I can't heal the dead. And then she's angry at the elders because of this stupid destiny. She's angry that they're charmed ones. She's angry at Phoebe for immediately walking into demons, and she even has, you know, that moment where she's just like kind of being very passive aggressive and just going, she's like, oh, you know, it's okay, we already have all the dishes out and we pretty much know who to invite, let's have another funeral tomorrow. Just everything is her angry at everybody, and by the time she's gotten to this episode, she's even angry at Paige and she doesn't even know her. And she has moments where she's sad, but there's just overwhelming anger. By the time she's gotten to that one, she's like, la la la, yeah, no, I'm fine, I'm happy, I'm just gonna go punch walls. And it's just like, okay, now we know it's bad because now you're just not dealing with it at all. And so the fact that they carried that on for so many episodes where it's like, no, grief isn't something that's over in 5 seconds. There is a journey of it, and I love that they really gave that to Prue and Piper, and they gave it to Phoebe as well, where Phoebe is kind of like a little bit more, she started off being very accepting and she had her breakdown later, and even she says, she's like, well, we can't both be messes at the same time. So I love that they both dealt with their grief in two completely different ways. And Piper, obviously, for her it was different. You could always tell that like there's a stronger bond between those two because Phoebe was always more like the did her own thing. So Piper was always so much more dependent on Prue, and that mother figure that was there her whole life is suddenly gone. So I think, yeah, it's a very emotional, powerful episode. And I remember every interview where Holly said, you know, that wasn't acting for her, that was her dealing with Shannon not being there anymore. And I think you could definitely feel it. It's very palpable, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
My number two was is Mermaid. Phoebe as
Yay!
Mermaid. Mine's all the way up at number 2 for the very specific reason of I am obsessed with mermaids. I have been obsessed with mermaids ever since I was a kid. I swear one day if I ever have the money, I am going onto the Mertailor website and I'm having a mermaid tail custom made for me because his designs are just incredible. I'm addicted to mermaid movies and mermaid everything pretty much, and I'm often like I'm watching something and I'm just trying to look to see how they've gone about doing it and like how seamless it is. In this one, it's actually pretty seamless how they've done the costume. Like this, there was a movie I watched and I can't remember what it's called, and funny enough, Mertailor did actually do the mermaid tail for the characters in this film. And when she's doing her little mermaid swim, you can see the costume kind of flip up. And I'm just like, that's an epic fail for me. The fantasy and illusion has been ruined. But when we're seeing Phoebe doing all this, I'm like, it's perfect and seamless. It's not coming undone. You fused and glued it together well, guys. It just, even the way like they did the scales over her breast, they blended it so well that it really did look like the scales were her skin. And I like that they just did this kind of fade, like everything looked like it was just naturally blending into the skin. And so it's just so beautiful. And then I love that suddenly she's all just very pro sea life and it's just like, yay! It's like, oh, you're cute. But
yeah,
I love that. I still have the promo picture of Alyssa in that mermaid thing. It's just one of my most favorite things to look at. I'm just like, I want that tail so bad.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Yeah, I think for this episode, I think the costuming was amazing, but I think the reason it was a little bit lower down for me is just because I felt like I connected more with Miley's story in that one than necessarily what Phoebe was dealing with. Because I know it was a lot of like drama with Cole again, and so for me, like this, like kind of like this story was not for me as, I guess, on the level that I wish it was, which is why I brought it down a little bit. Even though I think the costumes were like amazing, but I loved like Miley the Mermaid story and kind of how she was like, you know,
that was very much the Little Mermaid story line right there.
Yeah, although she got more time. She got 30 full days to try to get that love, not
and
3
she got
days.
to keep her voice.
Yes. But yeah, so I mean, I love those costumes though. They were so beautiful, and I'm sure we both got our mermaid scale towels.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll grab it right now. Yeah, right? I think one of the flaws of that episode, even though it's a part 1 and part 2, which at least gives you a lot more room to do more when it's a 2-parter, but I think one of the flaws is that I think they were a bit too ambitious with the season return, and we're trying to like give everybody their own individual story. Like you have your Innocent already has a pretty in-depth story. Paige has her story of being like, oh, yay, I got a promotion. Oh, now I'm going to quit because I just am so lost right now. It's like, oh, okay, that was a lot. And then you've got Piper. It's like, yay, I'm pregnant. Oh, wait, my mother died when I was young and now I'm trying to deal with the loss of me maybe abandoning my child and that. And so she's got her thing going on and Phoebe's like, oh, and I got divorced and now my dead husband is back from the dead and I'm really, really confused. I'm like, this is a lot for an opening episode. Like,
it is.
You could, I feel like maybe you could have touched on you could have started with Phoebe since you ended with Cole returning in season 4, so you could have opened up with that one, but since you know Piper's going to be pregnant for a while, you could have eased into that storyline, and well, Paige's wasn't really that relevant, so it could have happened at any time. It was just a little too much. And so I think, yeah, I can understand why it would be lower for you because I feel like, yeah, things kind of fell through the cracks because they were so ambitious. But nevertheless, mermaid!
Mermaids! Number 1!
Finally! Okay. Numero uno. So, Kristen, what is your number 1 charm transformation?
My number 1 charm transformation is Coyote Piper.
Really? Okay. Why is Coyote Piper number one?
So I feel like the reason Coyote Piper is number one is because I feel like we got to see a really big journey for Piper as a character. Like we got to kind of go back a little bit further to like when she was in high school and sort of see how she's transformed. And I think the story is really relatable about, not being popular in high school, having to go to your high school reunion and sort of that pressure of like, how do I seem cool? How do I show that I'm doing stuff? Like I went from being an awkward, quiet, shy kind of person in high school, and also I feel like we see that in the first season, so it like really made it so that like we sort of know this Piper that we're referencing, and then now I'm like this awesome, powerful witch. How do I show that to other people? How do I kind of be that confident person I want to be? And I think we sort of see Piper gets taken over by Terra the Life Essence. But I think even while she's being taken over, she's sort of developing this strength of like, I want to like stop this person. I want to get back to, myself. And I think that she does like grow stronger from that. And also we get to see like some really difficult choices being made in that episode. Like, do I stab my sister?
Answer apparently is yes.
And so like, I think that there was like a lot of kind of like elements going on there that ultimately ended up in like her becoming stronger. And also it's just like kind of seeing that journey. And so it was like relatable, but also magical.
Oh, definitely.
And I mean, you get that iconic scene of
choreographed
Piper
by Shannon Doherty
in her red little top and the black leather pants. And I just feel like that's like an iconic look.
It is. That's true.
So, yeah, that was just one that I think was a really, just like an episode where we really got to like really dive deeper into this one specific character and see things that we've already known about them, but then like kind of see them like go on this journey a bit, and also kind of see that test the other sisters.
Yeah, as you've said that how they deal with emotional storylines. And how so many of the emotional storylines are relatable, which is obviously why Charmed still has such a big following today. Why any TV series at all has a following. I mean, I know you love the reboot. We know that I don't. But I'm obviously someone who has enough of a brain who can say there's gonna be something there that someone can relate to. And so there's no such thing as a show being completely like blank. Somebody's going to take something from it. So whether it's this one, whatever, as long as somebody can connect to it in some way, like I'm all for that. But I think with this particular storyline, it's the part that's relatable is like we leave high school, we move on, we become our own people. And then it's like, I don't know if you've ever had this, because I certainly have, where I'm like at the shopping mall and I see someone who I went to high school with and I just freeze and freak out, and I'm just like, can I become invisible? Where can I hide? Because I'm like, oh my god, please don't see me, don't know me. I'm like, I'm not even dressed right today. Like, this is not the day for this to happen. But that thing where it's like you're suddenly confronted with all those teenage insecurities and whatever you were then, you suddenly become that person again. It's like, no, I'm better. I can actually impress people. It's like, but now you're around me and now I'm anxious and please go away. So I get that, where it's like, yeah, she's a business owner, she's a charmed one, and she's just like, yeah, and I was hella bullied in school and you don't know what that was like. Well, Phoebe obviously did, but that feeling. And then when she's got this, I feel like in a way like Terra kind of is like the popular girl, the beautiful popular girl who is suppressing Piper once again. But this is
trying to use her, take her power, just like that bully in school, try to use her to do things at her own P3 club.
The only difference is this one is a magical foe, and she knows that's her wheelhouse. So she's like, no, you I can fight. But then I love that when that's over, she kind of takes away that realization. It's like, no, I'm good. I don't need to impress these people anymore. They do not mean anything to me. Although, for me, I think the funniest moment of that episode is A, cat fight, and B, that the one at the reunion who comes up to Peru and Phoebe, you're basically saying, like, it's okay, I've been there too, I'm like 3 years sober now. It's like, oh, you think she's an alcoholic. Oh, lovely.
No, she's just possessed by a
I love that nobody
creature.
can tell the difference. It's like alcoholism, possession, like, oh, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's like, well, we can't really say she's possessed, but we really don't want you to think she's an alcoholic. We're really torn on this one, but thanks. It's just a great episode in general. So iconic for so many people. I think that's like in general for a lot of, especially like Piper fans, like that's like their number one for Piper. Plus, I wish I owned those pants, or that I could fit into them. But
the top is so cute. The little things hanging down.
It is.
But yeah, as I like think on this list, I feel like my last 4, Piper. I don't know. She just had something so relatable about her stories that I feel like always added that depth that I just love that, and I lean towards that, and I think that's why she was always one of my favorite sisters, because she always kind of had that depth to her.
That's why I got this. This is my Piper symbol.
Oh, nice.
So my number
one. Yes,
one.
what's yours?
My number one is the Greek goddesses. That is my number one place. It's, again, Greek mythology, like my wheelhouse. There's so much I love. Costumes one. The one who I felt was done the most justice in that transformation is Piper. It's, she's the mother figure. She's also now the eldest, so she's the carer of the entire family. She's the protector. And she didn't just get any god. She got the number one goddess of Greek mythology, Gaia, who gave birth to all the gods. She's the ultimate mother, and that moment where she accepts and declares herself a god and is just going on this epic rampage. I'm like, I know probably people are getting hurt, but it is just so awesome to watch. Like, I just love that. Also, just, there's something that I always love, whether it's male or female. I love characters who have that stance where they know they're powerful, but they don't have to, go over the top in showing it. They just exude that essence. And when Piper just stands there, not caring, and they're attacking her and it has no effect, and she just has the perfect line of, it's not nice to piss off Mother Nature. And it's just so epic, because it's just like, that's so good. It's like a drug. But they gave her something that it's total justice to her. They've given her the most powerful goddess in Greek mythology. They've given her the most powerful goddess in Hindu mythology. They've given her this badass from every freaking culture and religion. And it works for her. And she does it so much justice, but it's also great how they pick something that totally reflects her character, everything in that. And I love that for Piper, like all the other gods, like Cronus, who is a real god, who, funny enough, was the son of Gaia, so that was interesting. And then, of course, we had Demetrius and Meta, and none of those were real Greek people, and Meta kind of really is inspired by, like, Medusa, loosely. But I love that where they were just corrupted by power, the power hasn't gone to Piper's head. She's just pissed off. She's not, like, thinking like a god. She's just got a lot of pent-up emotions, and she needs to get them out, and this is how it's doing it. But I love that none of them were corrupted. They had a little bit of a power high, each of them, but they immediately kind of came back to earth, so to speak. But I totally see what you said about them picking gods and powers that kind of reflected their personality. I agree with you to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas because I feel like they took the cheap way out with Paige and Phoebe, and I don't feel like they were done justice like they were Piper. I think.
Ooh, tell me more.
I think for Phoebe, it's too much of a cliche for her to give her Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Like I think what Leo says is great. Like, you came back from like the darkest love and all that stuff. But you know, we've seen her have, you know, infected with the sin of lust, and that kind of always being like a running theme for her. But there's so much more to Phoebe's personality. I would have looked a lot deeper. I feel like going for like the love stuff is very superficial, like top layer to her personality, and you could have gone a lot deeper. I feel like they did that with Piper. There's a lot more depth to choosing Gaia. I would have like picked Athena, who is the goddess of wisdom but also the goddess of battle strategy. And I think for me that fits Phoebe because Phoebe was the first person to discover the Book of Shadows. She was the first person to study the craft, first person to learn how to cast spells and do potions and all that stuff, and she was also the first one to learn hand-to-hand combat. She's more than just, I like dating people. Like, so for me, I'm like, you could have picked a whole different side to her. She also has a career where, you know, she analyzes and she studied psychology. So you can also apply that to battle strategy. It's like, well, you can get into the minds of your enemies because you kind of, to a degree, have that as kind of a career. So for me, I would have gone with Athena. Paige, that one was a little all over the map for me. Because let's see.
I will say that one I was kind of like, war? And then when Leo explained it, I was like, I guess, but I don't know if that one, like, I could see Phoebe connecting more with love over, I guess, I don't know, other certain things maybe. But like the war one, I was kind of like, I felt like that needed to be explained a little bit more. You know, like at least the love, I was like, okay, I could see, you know, she's a very, you know, Phoebe's a flirty person, sure. Yeah. But the war for Paige, I was like, what? Can you explain to me what?
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch. I mean, okay, so she's the goddess of war, and I'm like, but what in her personality do we ever see her like being like actively wanting to fight? She's more in season 5, you know, being very proactive with the magic and everything, but that's more because she's trying to find her place, not because she's actually seeking a fight. And she's a free spirit who does her own thing and doesn't really, throughout the series, she's very much the person who grew up without sisters because she always tends to lean towards doing her own thing rather than doing something with her sisters. And I love that they kept that going through all seasons. It also frustrated me about her character, but it fits her character as well. And then you give her a trident, which is the symbol of Poseidon. So I'm like, what's up with that? That shoots lightning, which is Zeus's power. I'm like, did you just like throw every god at her and just like, she's just all of them. She's Zeus, she's Poseidon, she's Ares, she's all that. I'm like, is she? I even had to go like look through all the gods and goddesses. I'm like, who would she be? And I was just like, I'm a bit stumped. She's a very multifaceted character, and she doesn't fit into a box like some of the others do. And ultimately, I kind of settled on Apollo because Apollo is a multifaceted god. He's the god of music, arts, poetry, prophecy, like I think archery was in there maybe, like just so many different things. And I'm like, okay, hang on, Paige sings, Paige can draw, Paige in this very episode and the episode before it, she's been saying that she's been kind of having prophetic dreams where she saw this coming. I'm like, okay, I'm going with Apollo for you. I'm like, I don't know how you depict her as Apollo, but I'm like, that's the one that I'm going with because there's just something there. And I think that there's enough in there where it's like you could come up with a power and something that would work for me. That's what I got. But yeah, so I was like 100% with Piper, and then Phoebe, I'm like, yeah, I get it, but you could have dived more into her personality, and I felt they cheated and there was a cop out. And then Paige, I'm like, okay, you ran out of ideas, basically. That's what happened there. But ultimately, that's definitely my number one. It's just fun.
Yeah, it's definitely it's fun, and then it's dark.
It is.
But it's definitely fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think, like, in a battle, what was Phoebe going to do? It's like, yes, seduce them. I'm like, that's okay. That's one way to get them alone, but unless you plan to turn around and stab them or something, like, what does that do besides get someone laid? And as we saw, there were a lot of guys lining up for that opportunity.
It was so funny when they had like this scene where she's like on the couch and they're feeding her grapes and fanning her, like that stuff like that. That was like goofy. I was like, oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, where did she get the furniture? Yeah, anybody think? It just popped up.
Magic.
Thank God we have that excuse. Anytime we don't understand magic, it's like, but magic. That's always going to be the answer. I think that overall, this show does transformations really, really well. And like you said, it's great how transformations always reflect the character's story, the character's growth and conflict, and always relates to what is going on at that time in that episode. What is the central story, and how can we tie this in together? It's not an afterthought. Maybe sometimes they could afford to have done a little bit more thought, but overall,
in general, I think they've done a lot of thinking about these characters and their journeys, because I feel like there's a lot of other shows where they just like would let things go and not really do that. And I really like I feel like there's shows where they might have someone transform into a Wendigo and it means nothing, or into a Fury and it doesn't really, it's just to transform. And it's like these all had like reasons that made sense, and that you're like, oh man, okay, I'm on board. Which I just think that that's like such a testament to the writing and the world building and the character building.
Yeah, I wish that there were more shows that kind of took that time and effort, because sometimes I'm watching a show and as much as I love it, I'm going, I feel like you've completely forgotten where this character came from and what they're doing, and you're doing something with them that may seem flashy on the screen, but it just doesn't feel like it fits this character or fits the story. And I'm just like, can we go back? Oh, rewind.
Yeah. And I think like definitely from like the ones that I felt I was picking all came from a place of like sort of like how it made me feel like storyline wise, and like with these characters, like I connected more with the ones that felt like they came from somewhere, that felt like they had a purpose. And I just like kind of noticed that as I was like trying to go back and watch certain clips and things, I was like, well, that one, was a fun transformation, but like, where did that really come from? And I'm like, but this one, really dives deep into this storyline. That's why I felt like I enjoyed it more, because it added like extra levels to something that's just like, a fun transformation.
I love that we both had totally different ways we went into picking these things. You went very much for emotion, which I'm surprised that's not what I did, but I could have gone for like aesthetic, but for me it was about the culture and relating to something that's always been a passion for me that I've studied, and I love anytime any show decides to like bring culture into it and kind of just give you that sense of the world is much bigger than this one little thing. Even if it's supernatural, it's like, but it spans so much, and the magic is not just in San Francisco, it's everywhere.
Yeah, and I think that that's really cool when you look at like now this list that we've put together, that's kind of about like how something made you feel represented, or introduced you to learn something new, or introduced you to learn more about these characters. I feel like they all kind of have like that in common, which is like nice. And I think just shows again that, like what we were saying, like representation matters, in terms of culture, in terms of how you're feeling, in terms of these stories of like, femininity, masculinity, sort of like your feelings and anxieties and emotions, and just like having all of those things represented. I feel like the show did a great job with that.
So one last question that I have for you is, if we were talking about in terms of like a costume that was worn on this show, was your favorite costume that appeared in the series in your top 10?
You know, it was a really great costume that I kept thinking, like, I wish that there was a little bit more to this story because I wanted to include it, but then I was like, I don't know if the story really like brings me in, but like Paige is a vampire.
Okay.
I love that like silky red like ensemble that she's wearing. It was like
Alright.
felt very 90s because it's just like all stomach out. But I just felt like she looked so perfect as a vampire, but like I didn't know if to me the story didn't feel like super
Emotional.
like emotional, yeah, to the point where I was like, oh, I need to include it in my list. But that was definitely one that I liked. I love the Coyote Piper like red shirt and the leather pants. Those two I would say were maybe some of my favorite like just like outfits that they've worn as like being transformed.
Okay, nice. I like that.
What about you?
Mine has always been and will always be the flapper dresses in season 2 from Pardon My Past. I that episode made me fall in love with 20s fashion. Not so much the 20s era. There was a lot wrong with that era. But the fashion of it I thought was so great. I love that there was a speakeasy in the music, but the costumes were beautiful. Phoebe's red, Piper's black, and well, technically they weren't Piper and Phoebe. But I didn't include them because they weren't transformations. They were flat out playing completely different characters. But costume wise, they were my absolute favorites. I love any time I watch the episode, I stop, whenever they're on the screen, I stop paying attention to the story and I'm just laser focused on the costumes. Like, each time I watch it, I like discover a new detail in it. Like, I think when I first watched it, I thought that Holly's costume was just completely black, but then the more I watch it, I'm like, oh no, there's beading and there's this, like, really intricate things if you look close enough, and I'm just like, I want those outfits. Like, I remember going to my mum like, Mom, you can sew, right? And she's like, of course I can. I've sewed most of my outfits. I'm like, cool, can you make me some flapper dresses? Specifically these ones. Here's a picture. She's like, I will let you know. Never happened, but I can dream. I can dream.
Yeah. That's too funny. Yeah, those were beautiful costumes. Yeah, I love a lot of the ones where they like travel back in time or like are different versions of themselves. But yeah, I was like, it's not really a transformation, I guess, so maybe I won't include it. But
yeah. Either way, I love everything that we've talked about today. I love that we've not just talked about just like, oh, these look pretty, but we've really talked about the storylines and the characters and a reflection. And I feel like in doing so, I've learned a bit more about you. And I love that.
You as well.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, ultimately, I just thought this is absolutely fun. And I'm so glad that we did this because I typically don't actually enjoy talking about Charmed with other people. Like, I can talk about it with myself. That's fine. But with other people, I don't know. I feel like I get very protective. And I'm like, no, my Charmed. But I felt very relaxed during all this. So I'm like, yay.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I don't need to... I don't feel like I need to say go subscribe to Kristen because chances are you already are because she has a fantastic channel. I mean, she is just killing it right now. She has such a variety of stuff on her channel. Like, you're never going to be like, you know, like, oh, what am I going to watch? There's so much to pick from. It's so great.
Thank you.
And, of course, I love what you... I'm sorry that I've blanked on the name, but I love what you're doing with MTV right now during quarantine.
Oh, thank you.
Such a fun series, and I love that we're getting to see you talk about a little bit more things than I don't think we always see on your YouTube channel, and I love that other people are kind of getting to see what a lot of your subscribers see and pretty much why they subscribe to you, which I think is always great. But
I appreciate that.
If by some chance you're not subscribed to Kristen or following her on social media, then links are in the description box, and I encourage you to click on every single one of them and then like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff, because I have not regretted it because she's just one of the most awesome people on the planet.
Nah, that's you, girl.
No, trust me. I was talking to a friend the other day and he's just like, oh yeah, aren't you doing a collab with Kristen? I said, yeah. And he's like, yeah, she's so great. I'm like, I know, right?
Who's that? You have to tell me after.
Adam, you kicked his ass.
Oh! Adam.
And he doesn't resent you for it. How nice is that? Thank you to anyone and everybody who watched this video, and if you would like to see another charm related top 10, comment below and let me know. And if you would like to see Kristen come back and or just in general us do another charm related video, then hit us up and let us know, and we would probably be happy to do it for you, because especially in quarantine we have nothing but free time. So thank you so much for watching, and you guys take care. Bye.